I'm joined today by Thomas Coyne, who's president and chief instructor at Survival Training School of California. Thomas first formally taught these skills at the age of 16. Thomas, it's so great to talk to you. You know, there's so many people I know, myself sort of included, who certainly don't consider themselves outdoorsy. The idea of camping is not particularly appealing. And a lot of these people, myself included, are sort of resistant to take what are probably pretty basic precautions for if and when you are stuck in any kind of sort of survival situation. So let's start with, generally speaking, what are good skills for everybody to have that fall under the survival umbrella, not specifically for people hiking in the wilderness, but just for everybody to have?
Yeah, well, it's a strange thing we've built for ourselves in the modern first world in a country like America, where you'll have human beings that, however you view it, were either created or evolved to live on this earth that will now just die in their natural environment. You could put a first world modern human in a setting that their bodies, their minds, everything was designed for over the past 100,000 years for them to thrive in, and they'll just die just from being there. So it's unnatural. It's unnatural for a human being just to die from being outside for a day or two. So no matter whether you're an outdoorsman or not, you should have the ability to endure exposure. You know, should your grid fail, okay, because the city is based on the grid. If that grid goes down, you know, there's not a lot available. So if the grid fails, you should know how to fend off exposure, not how not to die from just being outside, how to get a fire started or generate heat, how to fend off heat and find or treat water. You know, a lot of people don't even know how long to boil water. A lot of people can't distill water on their stovetop. That's one of the most simple life-saving things you can do. In any emergency where there's a grid failure, there's a lack of clean water. It's never that there's a lack of water itself. You know, it's one of those water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. You know, you have a bad flood. You're in a places where you can have a bad flood. Well, all your drinking water is bad, but there's plenty of water around. And knowing how to distill with pots and pans, even if you have to go out and do it with some fire and some sticks. You can't use your stove. It's so simple. You could teach a 5-year-old to do it. Yeah, most people don't know these basic things. Where if someone isn't there to deliver them food and water and shelter and climate control, they have no way to provide it for themselves. It's a
All right, so
completely unnatural
let's
state.
go through some of these sort of step by step. Let's start with fire, which is an interesting one. For the average person, as interesting as it might be to get a fire going by rubbing sticks together, for the average person, is it reasonable to think if I have a kit with some fire starting aids, is that okay, or should everyone really be able to start a fire by rubbing sticks together?
You know, I don't expect everybody to be able to go caveman again. You know, we do have modern technology, and that's the great thing is, you know, material science in the 21st century is developing new and amazing things every day. So rubbing sticks together is all fine and dandy. And the thing about that is, you know, you have to be of sound body, things like that. If you've taken a bad injury or anything like that, things like that can preclude you from being able to make a friction fire.
Hmm.
But you can go to your local REI or a store like that, and you can buy fuel cubes, okay, that are about the size of a piece of chewing gum. They'll light if you just give them like a hot look. They light so easy, and they'll burn. And it's just about the size of a piece of chewing gum. It'll burn for 12 minutes at 1,300 degrees. Okay, they have matches down there, UCO stormproof matches that you could dip in water, will light. You could dip in the mud while it's on fire, pull out of the mud, and it'll be burning again. It'll
Hmm.
burn underwater, all that. So for just like a $5, $10 investment, you can have you know, 5 or 10 fuel cubes that will burn. You know, like I said, at 12 minutes at 1,300 degrees. You know, you have over an hour of 1,300-degree flame to get your fire lit, and you have 20 matches that can't be turned off when they're lit. The wind can't blow them out, the mud can't smother it, and dirt can't smother it. So making a fire with that kind of thing is easy. It's just a matter of being trained and being prepared, having it enter into your awareness.
Okay, good. So that tells us about fire. Now let's go to water, which is another one you mentioned. When you talk about distilling water, knowing how long water has to be boiled, etc. For the, again, not hobbyist and survivalist, but for the average person, talk us through the best way to sort of secure safe drinking water.
Well, if you need to find water in any way, the best thing you could do is look for the riparian zone, or in layman terms, the green belt. Okay, whenever you have a solid water source, a year-round water source, there's always vegetation lining its banks. That vegetation is water dependent. The roots have to be in the water table. And because they are in the water table and have to restrict water, they generally have big, broad, bright green leaves. Okay, and you'll have runs of grasses and things along there. So what you see is water, when it's in canyons, it runs in lines and snaking lines. In a lake or something, it'll pool in a circular structure. So you see this line or circle of bright green that's a distinctive green from the rest of the environment. It just really stands out. You're looking at a green belt. That stripe of green looks like that it's following the path of water, and that's where you're going to find your water. And any water you want to boil for 1 minute rolling boil is all you need at sea level. For every 1,000 meters you go in elevation up, you're going to have to add another minute because believe it or not, water boils at lower temperatures at higher altitudes under lower pressures.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're up at 2,000 meters, your water is going to boil at around 190. You can't get it any hotter because it's going to become steam after that. So if you can't get it hotter than 190, you have to boil it longer. So that's just a little bit of basic water location and disinfection. There's a lot of great filters out there. Learning to distill. Go on the CDC website, U.S. Center for Disease Control, FEMA, stuff like that. They'll have diagrams or even YouTube just to learn how to distill water on your stove. You can distill alcohol that way too. So you can turn your whiskey into moonshine on your stove. Yeah, it's all these skills are very, very simple. That's the thing. Making a fire, finding water, treating water, being able to make a bandage or splint a broken leg. All these techniques are all simple. Anybody can be trained to do it. It's just a matter of getting the training.
And Thomas, as far as shelter goes, you talked about exposure. Obviously, we don't have time to go into exquisite detail about exactly all of the techniques, but what sort of level of training is it useful for someone to have in terms of creating some level of shelter for themselves, be it from the cold or hot? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, just building a basic debris hut. With 30 minutes of training, 30 minutes of training, I can have you building a basic shelter that's weatherproof in the field. The thing about shelter is it can take time though. You might want a cutting tool. If you don't have any cordage, you might have to improvise it from your clothing or make it from your environment. If you're an emergency situation where you need shelter, you probably need it quickly. You don't want to spend hours making it. So it's good to have just a little length of string and an emergency blanket in your kit. If you're going to be hiking, you want an blanket. You can get one that's called a heat sheet that'll fit in your pocket. You can make a shelter out of it, or you can just wrap up in it in the cold. For your home preparedness, if you're worried about some kind of structural failure, if you have to bug out of your house, if there's been an earthquake or fire coming, there's a variety of great tents. You can get like a 10-man, 2-minute setup tent that'll hold 10 people, so you can stand up, get changed in it, fit an air mattress and a little table to eat at. It'll set up in 2 minutes, just like kind of automatic pop-up style. And so if you and your family get put out of the home with just a few basic camping supplies, you can live pretty good over for the next several days or whatever until it takes to restore your domicile.
And typically, do you want high-speed internet, or is dial-up fine in these complete, unexpected situations?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But the last thing I do want to talk about is talk about the balance between, there's people who say, you know what, I don't prepare. And if there's an interruption to the food supply, basically I'm dead. And then on the other side, you have the sort of extreme preppers who have years of food stockpiled to the extent that you can. Talk to us a little bit about what makes sense as far as that goes in terms of planning for food supply interruptions.
Yeah, well, one thing I train for real world scenarios. We're the nation's only year round all weather field school. We go out with no sleeping bags, no blankets, no tents, nothing like that. in temperatures down to single digits and snow and freezing rain and stuff in the winter. So we don't train for what ifs. I don't go for hypotheticals and things like that. I go by my own field experience, the field experience of others, and I research natural disasters. So you can what if all kinds of things and fill a huge storage room for all kinds of what if a nuclear bomb goes off and this, that, and the other thing. But really, just about everybody should be able to be prepared for at least 72 hours for any kind of incident, any kind of disaster to happen at all. I live, we're survival training school, California. So we're out here in California. We have wildfires. Okay, we have the possibility of very large earthquakes anywhere in the state at any time. There's so many fault lines here. We have the possibility of tidal waves. We've had tidal waves in California. We've had tsunamis. We've had riots here, and now what's to stop any two of those things from happening at once? What's to stop an earthquake from happening while we're having these massive wildfires? And what we've shown is our emergency services are lacking with these large-scale disasters. Katrina and Hurricane Sandy, this is right there in New York, and people a week afterward are having trouble getting supplies, and that's in New York with all the grid, all the infrastructure, all the ability to pre-position in the world. So what you have to realize is, through blundering, incompetence, or just the situation being too vast, there might not be anybody come to save you. We always think, oh, I'll just call 911, or I'll call this, I'll call AAA, I'll call this guy, that guy. But if there's a big flood, if there's a big earthquake, there's gonna be so much going on. Maybe for a few days, no one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
You're that broken leg you got to deal with, that you got from a piece of your house falling, or the burn injury you got getting out of your house during a wildfire, getting out of the road. Anything that happens, you got to deal with for several days, man. And anybody should be prepared for a few days. Just enough drinking water, enough food, and basic medical supplies for a few days. You're a grown human being, and you know how to treat a wound. Okay, if someone's robbed you, okay, that should be part of your humanness. Okay, everybody can get injured. Everybody does get injured from time to time. You should be able to treat a broken limb. You should be able to treat an open wound. These things shouldn't be overwhelming to a human being that's an adult that can take care of themselves. If you can write a check, right, and you can pay your bills on time, you should be able to splint a leg, and you should be able to pack a wound. And disaster can happen anytime. It doesn't have to be, some nuclear bomb or a Red Dawn scenario or anything like that. Talk to people going through these floods and things right now all over. How many people they wish they would have been a little bit more prepared now that they don't see license sirens coming to help them. So.
All right. Thomas Coyne, President and Chief Instructor at Survival Training School of California. Thomas, thanks so much for sharing with us.
Hey, thank you. Anytime, man. We really want to get this knowledge out there. We feel as though everybody should have at least a little bit of this training, and we want to make it approachable for anybody, any body type, any background. So being able to talk to some people that are, don't generally think about this kind of thing, it helps a lot. So thanks for having me.